Certainly during the race, when we first saw it happening, you just assume that it's a cross-threaded wheel nut. And anyone that's ever put, nuts and bolts together, particularly if they're, like number plate plastic things, they're very easy to cross-thread. Even putting, the lid back on your can of fizzy pop, you often cross-thread it, and then it seems really hard then to get off. I don't believe this is the root cause of what was going on there. The actual problem was more to do with the wheel gun operator and how the wheel gun connected with the nut. So while at the moment, as I understand, the wheel nut is probably now back at Brackley, still attached to the wheel and to the upright, and they're going to have to literally cut that off in order to see if there was an underlying problem either with the cross-threaded nut or with goulding between the wheel nut and the titanium shaft. But the real problem really was, as I say, the power of the wheel guns and how the mechanic connected it. And this is something that I don't think I've seen before. We've seen cross-threaded nuts going back years and years and years, nuts that haven't been tightened, nuts that don't want to come off, nuts that go spinning off into the pit lane, lots of those problems. So what actually happened here, as far as I can recall, is a unique situation. So Bottas came in for his stop, the mechanic is there ready to put the wheel gun onto the nut, and normally the wheel gun is connected with the nut almost before the car stops. Now Toto said that Valtteri stopped slightly short in his pit stop. Looking at the markings from the overhead photographs that we got, I don't think it was significantly short, maybe 5 centimetres, but certainly well within the limits of what a mechanic would be able to cope with. And then when he then put the wheel nut on, or the wheel gun onto the nut, it wasn't aligned, and I don't think he had the right level of body pressure against it. And then when he hit the wheel gun button, what effectively he's done, he's just pulled off all of the dogs, all the little teeth, the little sticky out bits on the wheel nut, and has just wiped them off completely. So what you now have is effectively a rounded nut. And again, anyone that's ever worked on old cars, you know what a rounded nut can be like, or if you chew up the inside of a Phillips screw head. There was absolutely no way at that point they were able to get that wheel nut off. And again, this is a really unique situation. And when you look at it, you have a titanium shaft on the axle, and obviously that's very, very tough, very strong, and it's designed, made from that material for that reason. You then have a softer wheel nut, and they're either sometimes titanium, more often they're aluminium. And then when you get the wheel gun, and we've spoken about wheel guns lots of times, everyone uses effectively the same wheel gun, the Paoli Hurricane. As standard, that delivers 700 Newton meters of torque, which someone pointed out to me is more torque than a BMW M3 delivers. It's incredibly powerful. And Formula One wheel guns have then been tuned beyond that. The pressure is upped in the rig system. So when he connected that, he literally just wiped all of the features on that nut off, allowing them to take the nut off. And I've never seen that in practice. I don't think any of the teams have ever spoken about a situation like that before. So it is quite unique. And it does then make you wonder is how much did Mercedes need to react to this? We're under a budget constraint this year. Do they need to go and make all new wheel nuts? Do they need to change maybe the wheel gun design? But again, these are all covered by the homologation regulations this year. So they would have to argue with the FIA if they do want to change them. Is this what they want to spend their money on? Will the FIA see this as a reliability fix, which is allowed under the homologation regulations? So it's all a little bit tricky. And you could also argue this is such a freak occurrence that maybe Mercedes will just think more about how the mechanics are working on the wheel guns than making mechanical changes around it. There could be an underlying issue here. As I said, it could have been cross-threaded, it could have been galled. Valtteri may have hit a barrier and just put some odd, misaligned torque into the wheel that's just locked it in a position, which does happen from time to time. There could have been someone over-torqued it on the grid. Again, I tend not to see that because you see the mechanics work very diligently around the grid. But again, that's a possibility, and that's what Mercedes are obviously going to be looking at in the early part of this week. Materials one option. I think that might be hard to get past FIA homologation. If you look at the design of the wheel nut, rather than having quite large what they call dogs on the outside of the nut, which are these little thin plates that you see that the wheel gun's socket has corresponding machining marks on it. Maybe they need to make them thicker to prevent this happening again. The problem with that is that when you then put the gun on, you've got more chance of getting kind of dog-to-dog contact and the wheel gun won't connect. So by making them super thin, they're actually making it quicker for the pit stops because there's more chance of getting the wheel gun on. So if you make them thicker, it could delay stops slightly, but it may prevent this kind of issue happening again. Then again, maybe the sheer power of these wheel guns is just too much for even a slightly thicker dog on the outside of the nut. Incredibly frustrating for the mechanics and obviously for Valtteri as well, which he I think was quite open about. So yeah, I think there's lots of talking to be going on back at Mercedes, but by and large their stops are nearly faultless. So I don't think we can be too hard on them in this situation.